Welcome back to the 127 Fit podcast. Today's guest is an ultra runner, coach, trainer, speaker, writer, and the founder of Run Epic. Today's guest is Gary Stotler. Gary, I want to welcome you to the 127 Fit podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
For sure. So, Gary, we're just going to jump right in to 4 questions that I like to kind of call the conversational warm-up questions. The first question that I have for you is, how do you start your day? Do you have a specific morning routine or morning ritual you like to stick to on most mornings?
Absolutely. So my alarm goes off at 3:50, and I hit the go button on my coffee maker, and then I lay in bed and meditate for about 10 minutes when my coffee's brewing. When my alarm goes back off and I get up, I grab my journal and a cup of coffee, and I start with about 15-20 minutes of just writing, clearing my head, writing my goals down, and just getting my head ready to go for the day.
Cool. Now, I want to touch on, Gary, just for a moment here, kind of the meditation aspect of things. And then I also want to kind of touch on the journaling, because throughout all these podcast conversations I've had, I'd say probably 98 to 99% of the guests, they have some sort of meditation immediately in the morning as a part of the routine. And there's also some sort of journaling, writing, something of that nature. So first of all, what does that meditation kind of look like? Is it a guided meditation through an app? Is it just something that you kind of practice in terms of like mantras? What does that look like specifically for you?
So specifically, I lay down, I just lay down on my back, close my eyes, and I just go out. And what I mean by that is I've been practicing meditation steadily for about a year now, and I started several years ago, about 2-3 years ago. I was literally going so fast in life, one of my friends convinced me to just stop for 60 seconds and just be quiet. That was all I could do, was just stop for 60 seconds. And that is, it went from 60 seconds to 5 minutes to 10 minutes. And then, now I can be in an hour and a half long yoga class that's specifically guided meditation. But I've just taught myself that for 10 minutes, I'm just quiet. And I just lay there and I kind of let my head go, but oftentimes after about 60 seconds, what it'll do is it'll just calm down. And I'm not asleep, but I'm not awake, and I'm just there. And it's just a very great way to start my day.
Beautiful. Okay, and I also would just like you to touch on a little bit, like kind of like the journaling, the writing. Like what does that look like for you again specifically?
So I start every journal entry with, today is the first day of the rest of my life. No matter what, it doesn't matter if I had an awful day yesterday or the best day of my life. Today is the first day of the rest of my life. And that gives me the opportunity to write out whatever is on my mind, good, bad, or indifferent. A lot of times I'll get rid of a lot of the clutter, a lot of the junk in my head. If I had a bad day, I get rid of everything, and I just get rid of it so that it's gone. That's helped me clear a lot of the negative emotions instead of carrying them into the next day. That's helped me a lot. Other than that, I have 5 specific questions that I go through. I call it the darkness, the sunshine, the sunset, the sunrise, and hope. And it's 5 specific questions that I go through. And it comes out of cognitive behavioral therapy, but what it does is it just takes me from where I am, and it kind of walks me through the tone scale so that I can start my day off on the right way. So.
Cool, man. That sounds pretty dialed in, and I love it. All right. The second question, Gary, that I have for you, do you have a favorite book or book that you like to gift often?
As you can see from my bookshelf, I've got a lot of favorite books. My number one life-changing book was probably Think and Grow Rich. I've read it, I don't know how many times, 50 at least.
Right.
Listened to it, and I just go over it over and over and over and over again. I just love that book. It's been, every time I pick it up, I learn something new, and it's impacted my life in so many different ways in business, fitness, and family.
Love it.
The book that I would say that I like to gift is a book called From Poverty to Power by James Allen. It was published in 1902, but it's just a super simple, easy read, but just a great book on living a positive life.
Cool. Now, I want to go back to Think and Grow Rich just for a moment here, because that's a classic, right? You listen to any personal development and personal growth, and even especially that kind of even within health and fitness, that book's going to be somebody says, what's your top 5 books? A lot of people are going to say, Think and Grow Rich. If not one, it'll be definitely top 5. So, and I know you said you've gained, so much from it, but is there maybe just one thing that just off the top of your mind, as I'm going to ask you this question, as this question unfolds, is there maybe one thing that just pops up in your mind? You're like, you know what? That's the number one takeaway for you personally from Think and Grow Rich.
The number one takeaway is looking behind the words and building a positive character. So each chapter it's a word. So persistence, organized planning, the sixth sense, all of these things, they're designed to teach you how to make that a part of you, a part of your character, a part of your personality. And so that's what I've done with it. When I taught myself being persistent, I became persistent. I mean, that is one of the words that I use to describe myself as persistent. And the reason that it's so important to take that down to your core is when times get hard, it doesn't matter if it's business, fitness, family, it doesn't matter if it's something simple, it doesn't matter if it's something extremely difficult. If that's a part of who you are, you're not going to give up. And so many times people, I want to lose weight or I want to run a marathon. And when times get hard, they haven't built being persistent into them. And so they tend to give up or they tend to fall off and then they have to restart again. But like persistence is probably one of the number one things I've learned, but I've become a persistent person, good, bad, or indifferent. But it's part of who I am, and taking all of those chapters and making it a part of your character is really what's made a difference in my life.
Beautiful. Now I'm gonna take this in a direction in terms of being persistence. Specifically, you use that word build, and I love that word because as human beings, I believe that we are created to build. We are created to create, so to speak, right? Now, how does somebody, and I'm pretty sure I kind of know the direction you're going to take this, but again, how does somebody from ground zero, somebody that's just at the bottom, and however you kind of want to take that, that could be spiritually, that could be physically, that could be financially, how does somebody build persistence in their life? Like in terms of like let's just start with the starting point, like they're at the bottom in whatever category. How does somebody take that first step in terms of building persistence within their life?
That's a wonderful question. So I'm going to try to take it 2 places and then tie them together.
Beautiful.
So the very first thing that I would do is, where are your feet today? Like, I don't give a shit how bad things are. If you can look in the mirror and say, things are awful, but if you can accept that, now you have a starting point. If you try to start where you were before, or you try to start somewhere in the future, you'll never take the right step forward. And so I look in the mirror every single day, and one of my questions is, how's everything going today? Like, what's the facts to the situation? Are we in a good place? Are we in a bad place? But I look in the mirror and I can truthfully tell myself where are we today? Where are our feet today? But by doing that, if it's a bad day, I know, okay, hey, I got to overcome yesterday, but I got to do it today. Or if I'm on a good path, then hey, I got to remember I'm on a good path. I'm not there. There's quote unquote no finish line. So I got to realize where my feet are today. Now, if you want to build persistence into whether you're at rock bottom or whether at the top, persistence is started with doing something small every single day. And the reason I say something small is as little as 20 minutes a day. That's 1% of your day. We can do anything for 1%. If we add in something positive, it will naturally crowd out something not so positive. And so for 20 minutes, if you're at rock bottom weight-wise, if you can learn to take a 20-minute walk every single day, that 20 minutes over 30 days is going to compound into, that's roughly a mile a day. That's 365 miles a year without doing anything different other than taking a 20-minute walk. An apple a day. If you ate an apple a day, every single day for 365 days, what are the odds that you're going to crowd out chocolate? Pretty good. I started picking up a book and reading until I found one concept, which has turned into reading 20 minutes every day. I read a book a month without any effort whatsoever, because 20 minutes is roughly about 10 pages. 30 days, that's about 300 pages. Average book is 300. That's $12 a year. And I read a lot more than that because I've become a better reader. But that's how I started, was one concept into 20 minutes. But that's how I developed becoming persistent with myself. And persistence goes a lot with consistent. You know, if you're consistent at something, you're going to become persistent at something because you're going to see, wow, if I do things every single day, I'm going to naturally get better at this, and I can take something that I'm kind of weak at and I can turn it into a strength. And once you learn that power to take a weakness and turn it into a strength, then you can look at anything in life and you can say, hey, you know what? I can overcome that because that's who I am. I am persistent, and I just know that if I set my mind to it, I'm going to do something small every day, and then that's going to just naturally turn into something humongous.
Good stuff. All right, so let's transition to the third question here. And if there's more than one, please feel free to share. But do you have a favorite quote, mantra, or word? Now, I know you mentioned kind of earlier with the journaling, the writing, today's the first day of the rest of my life. So that's definitely a quote. And I kind of want to preface this, Gary, on this favorite quote, mantra, word. It could be maybe it could be pertaining to the season that you're in, like right now, because we all go through different seasons of life. It could maybe be a favorite quote, mantra, word from a previous season of life, kind of however you want to take that favorite quote, mantra, or word.
Absolutely. So my victory isn't crossing the finish line. My victory is taking the next step after I want to quit. I wrote that at 4 a.m, like 2015, and I thought it had everything to do with running, and it has nothing to do with running. It has everything to do with life. And whenever I run into a stumbling block, a wall, anything, I just remember, look, it's not about getting through this finish line. It's about breaking through into the entire next level of where we're going.
Good deal. All right. Love it. All right. Last question in terms of the warm-up. Favorite or most listened to podcasts? And if you're not the biggest podcast listener, that's okay. Maybe there's somebody on YouTube. Maybe there's somebody on social media. Maybe there's just an individual or individuals that you really respect, kind of the message they put out there. So
so if he was still alive, he would definitely have a podcast. But his name's Jim Rohn.
Yep,
so
of course.
He was Tony Robbins and Darian Hardy's mentor. But he's probably the most influential business philosopher to ever live. And I listen to him a lot, most every day.
Awesome. Now, when I was, I believe it was on your website, I was just looking through in preparation for our conversation, and I saw that you've been like certified through like the John Maxwell coaching. Is that true? Is that true? Or
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. So why don't you just touch a little bit on John C. Maxwell, because I know within business and just kind of like the whole life coaching space, like I know he's got his own podcast. I've listened to it. He's right up there probably with Jim Rohn, Tony Robbins, those type of people. But what's John C. Maxwell kind of meant to you, and kind of the message that he puts out there?
So there was a specific book called Failing Forward.
Okay.
I read in 2017, and I was literally at the bottom. I was drinking every day. I was going through divorce. I was depressed. I was anxious. You name it. I was going through it. And I don't even know how I ended up with this book, but it's called Failing Forward. And I didn't even read it. I opened it up because at the beginning of each chapter, there's a quote. And that was all the energy that I had at that time. But I would wake up and I would read a quote. And I would be like, okay, you can't give up today. And then I would wake up the next day and I'd go to the next chapter and I would just get to the first part and I would just read, okay, you can't quit today. Like all of these things that you're going through have a meaning at some point in life.
Absolutely.
We just don't know what they are right now. So that was the John Maxwell book that really just kind of introduced me to him. And then I ended up signing up for his coaching program.
Cool.
And it's been one of the most important things that I've ever done in my life.
Awesome. Okay, so kind of at this juncture in our conversation, Gary, I kind of want to just move into your backstory. So I'd love for you to share with myself and the 127 Fit podcast listeners, where did you grow up? What did those younger years look like? You know, if you want to speak on maybe like your mom, your dad, that situation. Do you have any siblings? Were you involved in sports, other extracurricular activities? Just paint a little bit of a picture for all of us listening to this, just in terms of like what those earlier years look like for you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm piecing together a lot of my childhood as we speak. I definitely suppressed quite a bit of it, and so I'm going back and slowly trying to put together the relationships. I didn't really have a relationship with my biological father for years and years and years, and I actually, oddly enough, about 2 weeks ago, I went down to Arkansas and I spent 3 days with him, and it was the longest we've ever been together since I was like, I don't know, probably 12. And I was really able to piece together a lot of my childhood that I didn't know about there. I grew up in a small town in Wheatland, Wyoming, town of like 3,000 people, lower middle class, if you can call it that. Just a little farming community. I tried to play sports, wasn't any good at it. And yeah, I don't really remember much of it. Like I said, I'm trying to piece together a lot of that stuff. When I was 16, my stepdad passed away, and that was a big turning point in my life. And then I just went to college, really just so I could get out of the small town and go party like a rock star.
Yeah,
That was all I wanted to do.
Now, in terms of, because I grew up in Iowa in a town of 5,000 people, so kind of, you know, if your memory kind of recalls, like, what was it like for you growing up in a small town? Because any of us that grew up in a small town, it's much different than growing up in a big city like Denver, where we're at today, right? Like, you know, a lot of people are related, everybody knows everybody and everything about it, everybody, and all the kind of the uniqueness. You're kind of like underneath this microscope, so to speak. Was that kind of your experience? Do you have any kind of like, you know, memories of being like in a small town and kind of like maybe feeling a certain way about that, or not per se?
Everybody knew me as the overweight kid.
Okay.
Every nickname I ever had: Cream Puff, Hoss, which means gentle giant. Those were the things that just they were with me. It didn't matter where I went. Right. And so that was one of the things I remember. Yeah, you're always under a microscope. I never fit in. You know, I didn't fit in the band. I didn't fit in on the football team. I didn't even fit in with the kids that were out back smoking pot. I just didn't fit in anymore. I remember just being so lost. My entire, like, just being, you know, I was just lost. I would smoke pot and I would drink just because, like, I wanted to fit in. And I tried to play football. I tried to play sports just to fit in. And I was off with the saxophone, but I tried. And I couldn't even fit in there. So I just remembered, like, just being in this big circle of I didn't know who I was and nobody really accepted me. And so that played a huge part of in my life. Is really not understanding who I was, or always trying to mold myself into what I thought other people wanted me to be.
Now, before we kind of transition into college and things like that, was there what did you have? Because all of us throughout life, through all the seasons of life, there's some sort of escape for us, whether that's working out, video games, you know, there's all kinds of different things. Some people it's sit in front of a TV. For you, during your childhood, you know, was there an escape? Was there something that you kind of went to and you felt comfortable in that place, in that space, so to speak?
Absolutely. I used to, my safest place was hiding in my room eating. That was really the safest place that I knew. I smoked pot. I drank from a very young age. I tried to play sports as an escape, but that never really worked. So pretty much my favorite place was just that dark place in my mind where I could just go in my room and just eat whatever I wanted. It wasn't a weird thing for me to eat 2 or 3 king size candy bars just in one sitting, and I would hide it from everybody because I didn't want to. I knew that I shouldn't be doing it. I was embarrassed, but apparently I liked the embarrassment and the shame that it brought to me. So,
did you have much of a relationship then with your mom or not?
Yeah. So what I got to be careful how I say this.
No, I understand.
But, I thought my relationship with my mom was one thing, but it turns out it was something entirely different, or I remember it entirely different, whichever way you want to look at it. I just didn't really. She wasn't somebody I could just go to and talk to.
Okay. Now, you mentioned your stepdad passed away when you were 16. That was kind of a turning point for you. How did that become a turning point for you at that stage of your life and that age?
I grew up really, really, really fast, almost overnight. So I was a pretty mature kid, but after that, I mean, I was completely alone. Like, I still lived in my mom's house, but she was obviously heartbroken. I had 2 little brothers that were there, But I buried myself in a girlfriend and football and just tried to escape, and I couldn't wait for the last 2 years of high school to be over. I just wanted to be gone and out of there. So I worked, I kept a couple jobs throughout time, and then I played sports, and I didn't really show up for school. I don't know how they gave me a degree, but they gave it to me, so I took it. But,
Okay.
It was a tough couple of years. I didn't really understand what was going on. I just knew that, I was 16, and all of a sudden I went from having a dad to not having one.
Okay, so let's just kind of like transition into college. Then you kind of mentioned you just kind of went to college because probably that's just what you're supposed to do, right?
Right. Yeah.
So where did you go to college? What did you study? And just maybe quickly touch on just that experience. Was it kind of just a continuation of your younger years in high school of being overweight? Just kind of feeling that you can't fit anywhere, or did maybe something shift in college or not?
College was the first time I actually felt like I fit in. I showed up at a fraternity house. Those guys were awesome. They just instantly, I became friends. I ended up getting drunk one night, had a cowboy hat on, and instantly became Billy Bob, just like off of Varsity Blues.
Yeah.
So my identity became this drunk, overweight guy who wore a cowboy hat, and that's how everybody knew me. And so that's how I acted. I was drunk 8 days a week, didn't show up to class. I almost failed out a couple times. And I partied like a rock star. I think I had the best time in college.
Okay.
And then toward the very end, I did actually start to take studying serious. I was about to get married, and so I actually started to show up to class, and I ended up finishing my degree, and then I almost had a second degree that I just decided not to finish. But I have a lot of psychology and sociology work on top of some political science and history stuff. But
cool. Now in terms of just like your mental state, because you talked about just kind of going into your room, eating the food, you're just kind of like in this dark mindset, every day when you're younger. And then you just kind of mentioned that, college was really fun, and, you were kind of like, the bigger guy with the cowboy hat, drunk and all that. And, like I partied in college and lived that life as well. And when you're in the moment, like the drinking and the partying and, hanging out with the girls and all this stuff, and, that's fun. But I found for myself personally, Gary, very quickly, like it's very fleeting, right? It's momentary pleasure. It's momentary fun. When you wake up the next day and you're puking, you got the hangover, like you're kind of back in that darkness. And I found myself in that place, during those college years. So did you kind of like, when you weren't the funny guy and being drunk and all that stuff, even though you said you drank all the time, kind of when you were alone with your own thoughts and, the party wasn't going on, so to speak, were you still struggling with a lot of, that darkness that you had when you were younger?
That's a phenomenal question. And if I were to go back, I would say yes and no. Yes, that's probably why I was drinking, and no, I just stayed moving forward because that's what kept my mind off of it. But now that you ask me that question, a couple of memories come to mind where I would just be hammered, and I would just be crying my eyes out, whether I was by myself or with somebody. So now that you say that, I probably use drinking to just shut all of that stuff out, or at least drinking gave me the opportunity to blame the crying on something else. Yeah. So.
And that's and that's my personal experience, Gary. Just like earlier, I asked you, in terms of like high school and when you were younger, your childhood. I was like, what was your checkout? What was your kind of like your comfort zone? And I know for me, I wouldn't call drinking at in my late teens and early 20s like a comfort zone, but it was definitely like a checkout mechanism because I really struggled with a lot of anxiety at the time. And then after I quit college football, there's just a lot of darkness I was going through and some of the darkest times of my life, and like the drinking and the partying and trying to, get laid and all that type of stuff. Like that was like that kind of that momentary rush. It was that checkout mechanism to cover up, the pain that I was feeling and the darkness that I was, really engulfed in at the time. So, and I really feel like, drugs and alcohol and there's a lot more, even exercise can be something that we kind of quote unquote use to check out because we don't want to face the reality. Right. So, now, you mentioned, before you kind of graduated, you kind of picked up your studies, kind of were focusing on things a little bit more because you were about ready to get married. If you don't mind talking as much as you would like or not like, but I know this is going to be a part of your story as we kind of unfold your evolution history. But what was kind of like, in terms of like getting married, like was this like your first serious relationship? What did that do for you? Was this another kind of place for you just to kind of like get lost in this relationship because maybe it's like the first time you're ever in love, and you were just kind of like putting everything, kind of like all your eggs in one basket, so to speak, with this relationship, or was it maybe something else?
Yeah, so Nikki and I started dating when we were 16, like 2 weeks after my dad passed away, and we dated all the way through high school, all the way through college, and then when we graduated college, we got married.
Okay.
After that. So it was a long term person. She's awesome, even to this day.
Yeah.
She's just an amazing person. So yeah.
Now was she so was she kind of a comfort then for you as well? I mean, you guys met in high school after your dad passed away, and then kind of going through the different struggles that you had. Was she a comfort for you? Was she somebody that you could kind of come to, and she's kind of like been there, so to speak, from day one, and you kind of were able to just maybe confide in her as well?
That's a great question. I'm still unpacking that as I kind of continue on this. I'm gonna call this a spiritual journey of everything. But
yeah,
that's what I'm still trying to unpack.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it does. It kind of seems like that. But
yeah,
I'm still not there yet.
Dude, life is gnarly, dude, isn't it? Especially when you start like looking back and trying to figure out like why we are the way we are today, who we are today. Like when you start looking back and like being like this and like. You want to talk about like just discovery and mind blowing, Gary? Like and I've been doing that, for last year or two, and I'm always try to be very reflective. But man, yeah, it's like whoa, dude. Like okay, like this puzzle piece like kind of fits in over here. Maybe this is why I am this way, and maybe this is why I respond that way, and it's pretty gnarly. So
yep.
Okay, so let's talk about I want to talk about just like you being overweight and stuff, because you already mentioned that. When you were younger and everything and getting made fun of. And this is kind of like, it seems like as I was just kind of preparing again for our conversation, this is kind of like, a big part of your overall story. And then, it's really a bigger part of like your transformation and who you've become today and you continuing on that journey of discovery. So talk about being overweight. You already mentioned a little bit when you're younger, but just like how did being overweight and just, being that type of an individual, how did that really shape Gary Stotler, up to the point where, there was something that made you just ultimately change?
Being overweight was everything. And the reason that I say that is I identified as being overweight. Everyone saw me as being overweight. It was celebrated that, I was a lineman. You're supposed to be as big as you possibly can. I came out of my senior year of high school football, and I had to cut weight to be able to wrestle at 275. And I mean, it was a significant amount of weight, like 30, 40 pounds. And so I remember that. And then when I went to college, I lost a whole bunch of weight because I lost all my muscle. And then I started drinking and I ballooned up again. I was about 300 pounds when I got married in 2008. And I graduated December of 2008, right after the stock market crashed. And I didn't really know what I was going to do in life. I had two options. One was selling cars, and the other was McDonald's, because the economy was like in the crapper. So I decided to sell cars because it paid $100 more per month. So I started doing that. And that was when I got into reading. So I started reading all of these business books. And I went from not selling anything for the first 3 months I was in the car business to being number one. And then I got into management, and then I was the number one salesperson and in management, and I got really, really good at business. The only problem is I got really, really unhealthy because I was working, 60 hours a week, easy.
Yeah.
I was always there. It's so easy just to run down the street to McDonald's or Sonic and just grab a burger and a soda, come back. And what I didn't realize is how much weight I had gained just in a very short period of time, just from the stress, from the food. I was drinking as well because, if you're in the car business, you're probably drinking too because you're drinking away your stress as much as you're eating away your stress. Of course. And I remember specifically I had one of my favorite customers said something about me really letting myself go. And I kind of blew it off, didn't really think anything of it. And then in 2012, October 2012, I had really been studying a lot of business. I was ready to move to the next part of the business life. And I went to Vegas for a social media conference, and I ran into a guy named Grant Cardone, and I had read his books. I had followed him on social media, and I love this guy. So I went to a seminar, hour, lights out. I mean, I sat in the front row and I couldn't even take notes because I was so engaged.
Yeah.
And then he was selling an online sales platform at the expo. So I went and I watched how he interacted with people. This guy's like 5'6", just a teeny tiny little guy. And his energy was on fire. I was like, I got to go meet that guy. So I walked up to him. I was like, Mr. Cardone, my name's Gary Stotler. You've really made an impact on my life. He shook my hand. He signed a book for me. He gave me 30 seconds, and I felt like a billionaire. Like, this guy he lit me on fire. And so he politely dismissed me so he could continue with people. And I just sat back and I just watched him. I was like, man, I want to be like that guy. Everybody wants to talk to him. He's got more energy than everybody else in the room. I want to be like him. So I ran back to my hotel room. And I still have the list of goals, but I went down and I wrote out all of my goals, financial goals, fitness goals, because I was about 375 at this time. I just went through and I was like, this is what I want. And then I went through, I'm like, okay, if in order to get this, I got to be this. In order to get this, I got to do this. In order to do this, I got to do this. And one of the big things was I knew that I had to get healthy if I wanted to be able to have the energy like him. So I went back to Toyota, and I crushed it. I mean, I had so much energy from this conference. I went back and I made more money than I had ever made in my life by 2. And then I won a sales contest, and then I went back to Vegas. I won a trip back to Vegas in December. On that trip, I read a book called The Compound Effect by Darian Hardy on the way out. And it just talks about making small changes and just small growth, a little bit at a time. And after I got back from that trip, life happened. I mean, just my life fell apart from January, February, March of 2013. Nikki and I went through some really tough times between the two of us, and then some personal things were going on in both of our lives, plus work. And I went from October at 375 to 397 pounds in March of 2013. And it's really odd that it's exactly 7 years to the week that we're having this conversation. But I stepped on the scale at 397 pounds, and I knew I was on a fast track to a heart attack by the time I was 35. I was 28 years old, and I was so scared. I knew I was going to die if I just kept living this way. So I remember walking out of the bathroom, and I told Nikki, I was like, look, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm never, ever, ever going to feel this way again. And she said, okay. And she's like, whatever you need, I'll support you. And I was like, I'm just going to take a walk. Like that was the bright idea that I had. Not go on a diet, not do this. I was like, I'm just going to go for a walk. Yeah. So I went and I walked around the block. And throughout the entire day, I just came up with this idea. I'm like, well, if I just change how much food I'm eating, if I can just do this. So I had a 4-ounce salsa. I went and bought some 4-ounce salsa bowls, and that was my food container. I would go to the kitchen. I would fill up my 4-ounce salsa bowl. I would sit down and put it down, and I'd eat. And then I'd wait for like 5 minutes, and then I'd go back to the kitchen. And eventually, after you have like 5 plates, even at 400 pounds, you're like, wow, have I really gone back that many times? And so it really dawned on me how much food I had been eating and how much food I needed to be full. And then I just started walking around the block every day. I went 1 block, 2 blocks, 4 blocks, 8 blocks, and it just became a daily I would go for a walk, and then daily I would just portion control my food. And about 6 months later, I realized, I was like, okay, I'm really doing a good job. I'm staying consistent. So I started looking at better foods. And that first year, I lost 110 pounds.
Wow.
Just walking around the block and just reteaching myself how much food I needed, and then reteaching myself the right foods to eat. And I didn't go through it. I didn't rip everything out of my pantry. I didn't go on a diet. I didn't do any of these things. I just, a little change here, a little change there. But all of those little bitty changes throughout the year made a humongous difference. And Nikki at the time, she had been doing some of the same changes as me. and she was doing this program called Couch to 5K.
Yeah.
And she had started running, and I was watching her because she would be in the backyard, and she literally wore out a path in the backyard because we were both embarrassed. I mean, to be seen exercising when you're that big, you believe all eyes are on you, right?
Right.
So I got really inspired by her. I was like, well, if she can run, I can run. And so I'll never forget. I was on one of my walks first thing in the morning. I'm like, okay, today's the day. Today's the day I'm going to run, and I'm going to run 1 block because 1 block is good enough. And there was a dirt path, and so it was really dark, and I went out on the dirt path, and I was like, okay, here we go. And I started taking a step, and I started going a little bit faster, and right before my block was over, I heard some guys. There was a warehouse right there, and I just heard them laughing. And I was like, oh my God, they're laughing at me. I can't stop. I can't let them see me quit. I can't. So I just kept going, and I kept going until I was out of sight, and I couldn't see him anymore. And I lost it because I wasn't strong enough to run a block. I had worked so hard for over a year, and I wasn't strong enough. And so I cried for 2 miles as I walked for 2 miles home because I couldn't go back the way that I came. And I just remember, I'm like, screw this, I'm done. I'm not going to do this anymore. I can walk. It's good. I thought about quitting, right all day. I was like, there's no reason to do this. There's just no reason. And then for whatever reason, I woke up the next day. I'm like, all right, you know what? Let's try this again. So I went on the same path, and I made it a block, and then I stopped for a little bit, and I made it another block, and that day still sucked, but it was better than the day before. And then every single day I just went out and I just did the same thing. And it took me about a month, but a month later I ran a mile without stopping. And then about 4 or 5 months later, same thing, just adding a little bit more. I ran 5 miles without stopping. I did it on Father's Day. I'll never forget that. I was so excited. And that was how I became a runner. I decided not to quit. And I made that decision, and I just kept going a little bit at a time.
What was it like, Gary, when you just overall, what was it like when you ran that first mile without stopping? Did that really just kind of set you on fire in terms of okay, I've got this. I'm going to keep going. I can keep going. What was that moment like, if you can recall that?
It was another step. And I didn't give myself the grace to just say, you know what, I did a mile. It wasn't, for some reason, I went from wanting to give up to 1 mile, and I was like, you know what, a mile is nothing. And I don't know why I thought that way. I didn't stop and enjoy that mile. It was just, I got to get on to the next one. And that was really when I stopped enjoying progress, and I started just pushing and quote unquote grinding away because it for some reason it just wasn't good enough at that point in time.
Right. Now, you mentioned being a car salesman and having quite a bit of success with that. As your fitness journey began and your running journey began, in terms of business and stuff, were you still doing the car sales stuff, or had you transitioned into something else? What did that kind of look like before we kind of continue on the fitness journey?
Yeah, so I stayed in the car business for a long time. After that, it was really interesting because for a long time nobody said a word. That first year, I didn't tell anybody I was losing weight. I didn't tell anybody I was walking. I didn't tell anybody I was eating different. And it took almost a year for someone to say something to me. But once one person said, "Hey, oh my gosh, Gary, you look great," something in my mind just clicked over, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, attention!" And they're giving me attention for losing weight, so I got to keep going. And then more and more people would say something. They would give me congratulations. They would give me kudos. They'd ask me how I was doing it, and then one day I remember I walked right past one of my favorite customers. I hadn't seen them in 6 months, and they didn't even recognize me anymore.
Wow.
Because I had changed so much so fast. And I stopped and I was like, how's it going? And they just looked at me. And that was the day that I knew that something greater had happened to me beyond what I could really comprehend and understand.
Right, right.
And then after a while, people kept... This is the oddest thing, but after I'd lost so much weight and I started running, I'd run my first half marathon and I started training for my first marathon, people kept telling me, you got to stop. Like, you've lost too much weight, you're running too far, you're going to hurt yourself, you're going to hurt your knees, you're going to be unhealthy, you're going to be sick, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And I couldn't, it floored me. At that point in time, I didn't understand why in the world somebody would tell me all of those things. But it was like this, people were hammering me. And so I had to get out of the car business because I was like, I need to get away from these people because I can't handle what they're telling me. There was too much resistance. And so I got out of the car business. I went back to school. That didn't work out. And then I ended up in insurance and financial advising and all that stuff. But then I ended up back at Toyota a while later.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
Long story, but the dealership got bought and they wanted me to come back.
Yeah.
And it was easy money. And
of course.
I was really good at it. So.
Now, I do want to touch on before we kind of leave, the business side of things up at least to this point in your story. And you brought up Grant Cardone because I've read his books. I've followed him on Instagram, and you either love him or you hate him, but like he's just. I'm not going to get too much into it, but he's just a special human being with special energy, and you can, if you're open to learning from him, you can learn a lot of valuable life lessons, right? So I just have to throw that out there because I've had conversations with other guests. They bring up Grant Cardone, and I'm just like, oh man, like he's an interesting, cool dude, but. In terms of sales, right? Just, and this is going to tie in. Obviously, this is going to tie in because I really want to learn more from you in terms of just how you coach people, how you get that behavior to change, how you connect with other humans. Because I know that's a big part of who you've become, right? But in terms of just kind of like sales and just kind of like, putting yourself out there and being the best salesperson you can be, what's maybe something that you learned in the car business and just maybe overall in business? Like what are a couple things in terms of how can you better, sell? How can you be a better salesman if that's really, kind of like the focus of your job or your career?
Absolutely. I love that question. So the number one thing, I was one of the shyest people to graduate high school, and to be able to stand in front of anybody now and talk to them, whether they're here for fitness or here for the business, the fact that I can just talk to anybody now is an entire different shift in who I am. The biggest thing I used to joke in the car business, my job is to take somebody that hates my guts, because everybody hates a car salesman, turn him into my best friend, have him give me a check for $40,000, and I have roughly about 2 hours to do it.
Right, yeah.
And so what I learned was people. I mean, sales, yes, I could bring up tons of sales knowledge. I could tell you how to do this, how to do that. But the biggest thing is just learning people and just talking to people, treating people the best that you can possibly treat them, and especially in the car business. It was 10% about the car. You can buy a Toyota anywhere.
Right.
But you can't buy me anywhere. And so I wanted to know about your family. I wanted to know about who you were. I want to know, what you're going to use the car for. What do you have to sell us? What are you going to do? What are you going to do on the weekends with it? Who are you going to show it to? And so I just got to know my customers better than anybody else got to know them. I kept every single car that I sold. I kept a little 3x5 index card with their name and where they lived and their dog and their pet and their kids and where they worked and all of these things. And I would go back, and each week I would go back through and I would read like the A's, and I would read the B's and read the C's. And I knew when those people pulled up to the front door for service, I went out and I greeted them by name. I walked into the service department. I just became a people person. Anything they needed, if they needed a ride home, if they needed to schedule service, they didn't call the service department. They called me. They texted me, and I scheduled everything for them. So I was like a maitre d'. And I was in sales, and I would send out thank you. My biggest thing that ever made a difference was I sent out 5 thank you cards every single day. When I went into work, I went to the service department, I got a list of names, and I didn't care who you were. I didn't care if you had ever bought a car or would ever buy a car. I sent you a handwritten, signed thank you card. And people would come in and they'd be like, hey, like, I need to know you. If anybody that would send me a thank you card. And so that became one of the most influential things that I did, was I just became a people person. And throughout time, I've learned more and more and more about people.
Absolutely.
And now I look at what we do, why we do it, and then what we hope to benefit from it. That's really what has turned into my coaching process. Is there's a reason why we overeat. There's a reason why we're not maximizing our business. There's a reason that, you know, if we're going through a tough time in life, there's reasons for all of that. So I want to know what the reason is, or like what's the action, why are we doing it, and then what are we hoping to benefit from this action? Because there's a reason that we're doing all that. So learning the behavioral patterns of people buying cars, there's a reason that they want, like, I want this Toyota. And then why do I want this Toyota? What do I hope that this car does for me? So just taking, you know, I learned that a long time ago. And now it has everything to do with life and nothing to do with selling cars.
Okay, we're going to, because I like to just keep the conversation just natural and free-flowing. So before we, again, get back into the fitness journey, I want to move in this people-person direction, because this is, again, as I was preparing for our conversation, you know, it seems like it's a big part of who you are, like, right now, and kind of like what, you know, fires you up and what you're passionate about. So from your perspective, Gary, what do you believe is, like, a human being's greatest need?
Perfect. Here's People 101 for you. All humans want love and attention in a way they understand. We communicate that love by either communicating to someone to give them love, or we communicate someone to get attention from them. And we want that love or attention in order to avoid pain or gain pleasure.
Now, in terms of like love, like, what is, from your perspective, like, what is love? Because, like, and this is, it's interesting, because there's been a lot of conversation. Again, it's just always free flowing, like, there's no agenda, right, except for my guests sharing their story. But lately, and quite a few times, like, just within the flow of conversation with my guests, like, this word love comes up, right? Because, like, I don't always ask, you know, what is a human being's greatest need, but as people are talking about maybe a significant other, or, you know, kind of love nowadays in our culture, if you get on social media, it's like, you know, all we need is love. And I personally feel like the word love in our culture is overused. And so that's why I always ask my guests when they bring up love, because we can say we love our dog, we love our camper, we love, you know, this podcast, we love this food, we love this, you know, exercise, we love this gym, whatever, right? So I feel like the word love is really watered down in our culture personally. So when you talk about a human being's greatest need is, you know, love and affection, like, explain a little bit more in depth for me and the listeners from your perspective, like, what is that specific love that us human beings need?
Right. So there's love and attention. And I think that's where a lot of where our culture mixes things up. So I can tell you what love means for me. And I don't know what love means for you.
Exactly.
But love is one thing. Attention is something entirely different. But the importance of that is we need love and attention. But we need it in a way we understand. For me, this communication, that's my jam, man.
Right.
That's the reason that I love what I do. And you don't have to pay me to coach people.
Right,
you don't have to pay me to have a conversation, because I literally love to have communication with someone. One reason that I love it is because I get attention, and I understand that I need attention via communication. You write me a note, or if I write in a journal, or if, you know, anything that is communication, that really lights me on fire. But if you buy me a gift, you're dead to me.
Okay, all right, no gifts for Gary.
But I mean, it's really there's the 5 love languages book, right? Like that. When I picked that book up and I read it, it was like I was hit with a ton of bricks.
I've read
so
it too.
Like, oh my gosh, there's different ways to do it. It means something completely different to anybody, to other people. And then, I mean, to not go into such a deep psychology conversation, but we have an adult version of us and we have a little kid version of us. And most people, they give and receive love on their adult version entirely different than they do on their little kid version. So it even creates even this more like this bigger confusion. So I don't want to really go there because that's too much for this. But just finding out, how do I feel love? Like, what is love to me? And it's going to be entirely different for me than it is for you. Now, I love your podcast. I give attention to your podcast. Your podcast gives attention to me, and I think that's where that word love gets watered down. Is we don't separate love and attention. It's just we kind of boil it all together. And if you give me attention in the right way, I'll just consider it love. Yeah. And that's a lot of times that's what confuses people and gets them down into some pretty poor behavioral patterns, because attention in a bar. Because I go out with a group of buddies and I'm associating drinking with socialization, that's attention. Like, the love might be for my buddies, but the attention is the drinking or the female attention, or if it's a female, the male attention. That's where it really gets into this really kind of weird psychological spot.
Great job describing that. And nobody's ever brought up, kind of a distinction between love and attention. So that's great. Would you highly recommend that book, The 5 Love Languages?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, because I've read it, and I've heard a lot about it, and then I was like, I'm going to read it, and you can kind of like Google it and just find the 5 love languages and kind of get the gist. But I think it's great to know, like, how those love languages affect you and how they affect others. Is that fair to say?
Oh my gosh, yeah. And it's so important because love is, because it's love and attention, it doesn't just affect you and your partner. It affects you and your kids. It affects you in any relationship that you have or don't have, any business relationship, any family relationship, any fitness relationship. There's a reason that people are in the gym for 4 hours a day. There's a reason people are posting on social media every day. There's a reason that people want to get rich and live in a big house with a really nice car. There's reasons behind all of that, and a lot of times figuring out the attention that they're hoping to gain from those actions is a big part of coaching people and a big part of helping people understand what they're doing that they may not even know that they're doing.
Okay, now you came to the podcast meetup that Carl and myself put on here. It's probably been about a month ago now. I talked a little bit there, and one of the things I said, just as I had an opportunity kind of just to share my heart, my passion, was shut up and listen, right? Now, and I know you've kind of heard it, but just like for me, through the podcast and just, my life journey over the last year to 2 years, like, I've just learned the power and the importance of shutting up, me personally, shutting my mouth and just listening to people. Now, in terms of coaching, connecting with people, even back when you were, a car salesman and just, all of your life experiences in terms of connecting with other human beings, I just want you, Gary, to kind of like share your heart in terms of the importance of connecting with people, tying that back to just, again, you being quiet and giving people the opportunity to share their story, kind of share what's on their heart. How important is it in terms of human connection to just listen to other human beings?
It's life or death.
Right.
Life or death. I mean, absolutely. If I had someone come to me and I talked about my story the entire time, they wouldn't care. Right. One of the best pieces of advice that my coach ever gave me was, nobody cares about you. They want to know what your story can do for them. And it kind of shattered my heart a little bit when she said it, but she's so right. Right. And it's people. The reason that people come to me specifically is because I've probably been through something that they can identify with. Whether it's being overweight, running 100 miles, depression, drinking, homelessness, whatever it is, there's a piece of that they can say, hey, you know what? I identify part of this with me. So they come and they ask me about that, but they're not really asking me about my story. They're asking me to ask them about that part of their story. And so by doing that, I'm listening with my eyes. And what I mean by that is when they ask me that, I'm now looking for what's inside of them that they want to share with me. And so I have I have 5 questions, and through those 5 questions, I don't want to say break them down, but I can break down what they want me to ask them so that they can share their story in a proper way. And then we can turn that around, and maybe I've been through an experience that's similar to them. I can tell them, hey, you know what, this is what I did to help overcome that, but more importantly, here's what you can do to overcome that. Here's an action idea. And that's the number one thing, is I listen to help people come up with an action idea so that they can take that with them and essentially work themselves through it, because I can't do their push-ups for them. I wish I could.
Of course.
But if I can help them do their push-ups, then give them a process or teach them how to overcome that adversity in their life, then they are able to benefit from that adversity. And when they benefit from that, I benefit, because I get to watch them go through it and I get to watch them overcome it. And then I get to learn something for myself and apply that to me, or share that with someone else. I can say, hey, you know, I haven't been through this, but Bob has, and this is how he did it, or Susie, you know, this is how she did this. And so it's people helping people, but without listening, I would never be able to hear what they're trying to get me to ask them.
If you don't listen, you can't learn.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's about as simple as it gets for me. It's like, if I'm not listening, like you said, and I love it, if I don't listen, I don't hear. If I'm not listening, if I'm not hearing, I'm not learning.
Right.
I'm not learning about myself, and I'm not learning about others. And it's especially like if you're a trainer or coach like we are, like if I'm not listening, if I'm not hearing, then and I'm not learning, then I'm not going to be able to provide my client or the person that's in front of me, you know, in whatever capacity they are in front of me, I'm not going to be able to provide them the value that they want or they need, they paid for, etc. Right?
Right.
Yeah. Cool.
Exactly.
Now, one more thing I kind of want to touch on in terms of kind of like just connecting with people and kind of the coaching space that you're in, that you hold. Before, again, because I really want to get into the running and all that, back into your fitness journey. But since we're kind of just flowing in this direction of our natural organic conversation, behavior change, right? Because that's something you have personal experience with, in terms of like you changed specific behaviors in your life to lose the weight, to become an ultra runner, and to become the man that you are presently as we're having this conversation. So when you are coaching people, what does that process look like, Gary? And I'm sure it probably starts with listening, right? And probably getting some background information, hearing their story. But kind of outside of that, where does that behavior change start for another human being? How can one human being affect that behavior change in terms of another human being?
That's a great question. So the very first thing that I start with is, who are you today? I ask people that. That is when people call me and I talk to them for the first time, the very first question that I ask them is, who are you? Tell me about yourself. Describe yourself to me with, who are you today? Because I want to know who you are today. I don't, we'll get to who you were yesterday and who you want to be tomorrow, but I need to know who you are today. I need to know who I'm talking to, who I'm dealing with. Once I can find out who they are today, then I can find out, where do you want to go in the future? And so you're Bob today, you're overweight, or you want to work on your business, okay? You want to go in the future, you want to be fit, you want to be able to run a marathon, great. Now, who do we have to become to be able to get what we want? Now, this idea came out of business, and it came from Jim Rohn, actually. He said, if someone gives you $1 million, best you become a millionaire so you get to keep the money. And the biggest thing is, if you have somebody that's never had a dime in their life and you give them $1 million, they have the same behavioral habits with $1 million that they had with a penny. And if you don't become a millionaire, if you don't become somebody that can invest their money, someone that can save their money, someone that can spend that intelligently, you're going to go back to being penniless. If you go on a diet without changing who you are on the inside, you're limited on how far you're going to go, and then how quickly you're going to end up going back to who you are. And the best example I can give this is, somebody comes to me and I want to quit smoking. Great, no problem. But I don't know if I can quit smoking because I've always been a smoker. They identify with smoking, they have 4 days and they'll be back smoking. I don't know if I can give up peanut butter. Well, is peanut butter a part of who you are? Because if it is, then, we can look around that. But if you're so focused on what you can't give up, then you're going to drift back into giving that, because you're going to, like, the second that there's the need, or the second that there's, if you had a rubber band and you start to stretch that rubber band, you're either going to break your rubber band and snap back, or you're going to stretch that rubber band too far and you're going to end up coming back to who you used to be. And so with that example, so one thing that I work with people on is I help them change their day-to-day actions. And while they're changing their day-to-day actions, I go to work on helping them change who they are on the inside. And this is not the easy way to do it. It's not the quick way to do it. You have to do all the work. I can look at you from the outside, and I can look for the things that you don't know. But ultimately, if we come up with an action idea or an action item and you don't put in the work every day, there's nothing I can do for you. But if you're willing to put in the work every day, then I can ask you the right questions, and I can help you come up with the right activities so that you can become that person. And so this is something that's really common with people, and it's kind of on both extremes, but I have people sit in my office, well, I used to be a college athlete. Well, that's great. Who are you today? Well, I used to be a college athlete. Who are you today? Well, I used to be. I don't care who you used to be. I will get to that. But if you can't look at yourself in the mirror and say, okay, today I'm not doing anything, like I let life get out of control, that's okay. Just accept it. Because if you accept where you are today, we can take that correct step forward. But if you're stuck in the past of, I used to be a college athlete, there's nothing that we can do, because you're going to want to just walk out your door off of your couch and run a marathon. And although it's possible, it's not going to be pleasurable, and you're going to do it one time and then you're going to go back to your couch. So what I want to do is I want to know who you are today, so I can start you off on the right foot, so that we can build this consistency, so we can build this persistence, and we do it. Who are you today? We find out what you're good at today and what you believe you can do. So if you think of a triangle, the bottom left is your mindset, the bottom right is your behavior, and the top is your environment. So the bottom left is your self-efficacy, what I believe I can do. The bottom right is your strengths. And so we work on your strengths and we work on what you think you can do. As we do that, then we can look at weaknesses as we build consistency, as we build our self-confidence on the left side, our weaknesses on the right side. And as we move up, we uncover these things called blind spots, things we don't know we didn't know. And then we become worthy of these things. We build our self-worth. And so by building ourselves up to this triangle, we can do it in the right way, so we get to keep the actions. So we get to keep the person that we're becoming. And then we have to grow our environment. Because if you want to be fit, but you're still going out on Friday nights eating a large pizza, your days are limited. So we want to get you with a coach, we want to get you with a community, and we want to get you with an accountability partner. And so by growing all three of those pieces, it's called the happiness triangle. And if we can grow each of those pieces, every time our happiness triangle grows, then we grow on the inside. And so by doing that, we just continue on a process, and we continue to work on things. We uncover these character traits that we want to grow, like persistence or consistency or organization or planning, whatever it might be. But we just work ourselves through that process of taking who we are today and working into the person we need to become to get what we want in the future.
That's good stuff, man. But I love it. Just like, who are you today? Because how often, Gary, like just in life as adults, when we're interacting with other human beings, it's like they're so stuck. And all of us can get so stuck in the past, man. Like, I work with mostly seniors at my one gym in Littleton in terms of personal training, and and I get it, I mean, like one of my guys, he's like 88 years old, so there's a lot of things in the past, but it's always kind of like, well, I used to be able to do a squat, or I used to run marathons. I hear that a lot, especially out here in Colorado. I used to be a runner, then I hurt my knee, and now they're 150 pounds overweight, and they're coming here because the doctor said you got to eat healthier, you got to lose weight, or you're gonna have a heart attack and die, right? Absolutely. So it's just being stuck in the past. Like I hear that so often, and that kind of that football thing. Oh yeah, like I was a all-state linebacker in high school, and it's like. And that's kind of where my mind just naturally goes, is just like, as I'm trying to listen to people and respect their story and what they're talking about, it's like, but today, because there's this one guy very specifically, and he's, I think he's like 42, and I was training him for a little bit, and, again, it's kind of like doctor's orders. You got to get the gym, that whole thing that whole spiel I just gave. But, I mean, he's only 42. Like, he's not old. Like, he's got, God willing, a lot of life to live. He's got a couple teenagers, but, like, hurt his back, and then now he's kind of a stay-at-home dad, and like then he's got a messed up shoulder, and it's just like he was always kind of like I used to be able to do this, I used to be able to this, and I didn't really have a whole lot of time or enough time, because once his training package was done, he didn't re-up with me. I didn't really have time to really dig into that, and it's kind of touchy too when you're at well, just, you know, I train at Anytime Fitness. I don't really consider that like a global gym, but it's a franchise gym, and you've got them for an hour. You got to do the warm up, kind of got to do the main workout, your cool down, and then they're kind of out of they're not really coming to you for like quote unquote coaching, right? I try to, you know, get a few nuggets in there every once in a while, but like I just wish I would have had some more time with this individual, because it's like, dude, like, do you realize like all you are talking about is the past?
Yep.
And if we're stuck in the past, like we're never going to be able to break through to the future and live fully. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. So we're in my office, but there's a mirror right here. Like where I work, my workstation, there's a mirror. I look at myself in the mirror all day. It has nothing to do with ego. It has everything to do with where are my feet right here, right now. I have one, first thing I do when I wake up is I have a mirror. I have a mirror every single place that I go, because the mirror has been the most influential thing in my life. When I was, the hardest thing, honestly, losing 200 pounds and running 100 miles was the easiest part of what I've done. Looking at myself in the mirror and accepting who I was and believing that I was worthy enough to keep the weight off, believing that I was worthy enough to run 100 miles, believing I've been worthy enough to sell coaching services, to believe I was worthy enough to become the person that I am, that's been difficult. And a lot of it came from growing up in a small town, and even though I went to college in a bigger town, people still, when I go back there, people still see me as the overweight guy.
Of course.
I haven't been that person, in 3-4 years now, but they cannot change who they see me as. Right. But what it took me so long to learn is that's not on me. That's on them, because if I ask them who they are, they're stuck in their self 3, 4, 5 years ago. And so that was the importance of me moving to Denver.
Yeah.
Is I got in with a new group of people, and people saw me who I am today.
Right.
And I love to travel. I will literally just buy a plane ticket and go drop into any city, and then I will just meet people. And the reason that I do that is to get a real, true reflection of who I am, because they will ask me who I am, and then I'll start talking to them, and then I will have them reflect back on me. Well, who do you think? After we spent 5-10 minutes together, how would you describe me? And they describe me exactly how I want to be described, which means that I'm giving off those character traits. Right. And the importance of that is we have to have a reflection of who we are. Now, it's Psych 101. We have to be able to see ourselves one way, but we also need other people to reflect upon us that way, because we learn from the thoughts and behaviors and actions of other people. So this is the importance of our environment, because when I was losing weight or running 100 miles, people, I would get in the same social circle and they'd be like, hey, let's go to dinner Friday night. I'm like, no, I don't need out anymore. You don't understand that. So I lost my friends. I lost my family. I got into a whole new group of friends with ultra running. And then when I became this whole other person that wanted to become a coach and a speaker, they're like, dude, why would you ever want to do that? And so it's like I had to break away, and I lost all of my friends again, because I had to keep separating myself from people that couldn't change the way that they were seeing me. And that was the most difficult thing that I ever did. That's what almost killed me, was not the losing weight or not the running 100 miles. It was this constant pull of, I believe I am this person, and other people saw me as this completely other different person. And I wanted to be this person, and damn it, I'm going to win. And so that's what ultimately that's what caused me to lose my friends and my family and just pick up and move to Denver one day. And I've lost another group of friends since I've been here, because I just keep moving forward, and not everybody is motivated as I am to move forward. So
now, you mentioned accepting yourself, and just kind of like this using the terminology, being worthy or worthiness, right? What's been the hardest thing, Gary, for you to accept about yourself?
All of it. And just all of it. To be able to look at myself in the mirror and say, wow, like, you're a handsome guy. That's taken me years to be able to say. Being able to accept a compliment, being able to accept kind words from somebody, being able to accept that I deserve to get paid for what I do. I just did what I did because I love doing it, and I was willing to go broke to do it because I didn't believe that I deserved the money for it. I didn't believe I was giving people value. And I didn't believe that when I was speaking to a group of people, I was like, well, you know, I'm not worth a dang, so why would they ever want to pay me to do it? And it wasn't until I had a couple coaches and a couple like very intimate friends say, look, you got to start doing this for free. You actually, what you have, what you're giving people is valuable. And that was hard for me. I mean, because I grew up, nobody accepted me. Nobody wanted to be around me. I didn't even know who I was. And the fact that, you know, I walk into a room and I know exactly who I am now, that's kind of scary because, you know, you walk into a room now and you're like, I hope that I'm the dumbest person in this room. Like, I really do, because that means that I'm growing. But if I walk in and I look around and I'm like, I can't get any value from this, I just turn around and I walk out. And it took me so long to get there because for so long I was crying for attention. I wanted to be the popular kid. I wanted to get into this group. I just wanted friends, and I just wanted people to like me.
Right.
And that was so hard for me. And for so long I changed who I was to fit in.
Of course.
And then I was rejected, and then I was like, well, if I'm not this, then who am I?
Right.
And so to be able to look in the mirror and tell you exactly who I am now, and then to be able to accept that, that's so hard. And then to continue on this journey and this path, that's why I journal every day. That's why I start my journal the way that I do. Today's the first day of the rest of my life. And then I look in the mirror. Who am I today? Not yesterday, not tomorrow. Who am I today? Where are my feet today? And when I can answer that question in a realistic manner, it gives me this clear vision of today. So I know exactly what I need to do today. And that way, when I wake up and I crush my day, I can be excited about it at the end of the day. But if I compare it to who I want to be tomorrow, then I'm setting myself up for failure. Or if I look at who I was in the past, I'm going to stop pushing because, well, I'm better than that guy was. So I got to know who I am today, and I need to execute exactly who I need to be today.
All right, I wanna finally step back into your fitness journey, right? Because I've had a lot of ultra runners on the podcast, and you guys are a different breed of cat, to say the least. One of my guests, he's like, my goal is to get you to run an ultra. I was like, dude, I don't care. Like, you can pay me, you can do whatever. Like, that's not gonna happen. I ran a half marathon once. I'm like, that's enough for me, man. He's like, oh, it's completely different. I was like, dude, no, sorry. But anyways, so like, just it's always fascinating to me to listen, you know, to people's stories in terms of how they got into, you know, running. But, you know, like, a lot of people run 5Ks, 10Ks, you know, even like half marathons. But you start going into the ultra marathon stuff, like that's, again, like that's just like that's an extreme, right? So first of all, I want to ask you, Gary, like, you know, once you started running, you made it that first mile without walking, you kind of just continue to have these breakthroughs in terms of your fitness and your health, and this transformation begins, you lose all this weight. I really want to focus on running though, right? Because, you know, running for a lot of people is a positive escape. It's you know, they, you know, a lot of times they won't listen to music because they say they just kind of like to go out, and it's kind of like this moving meditation for them. People just like, they talk about runner's high and all this. For you, when you really kind of committed to running, right? Let's kind of like move past kind of like just like running for maybe the health of it and to lose weight and all that. But when you really said, you know what, like I'm committed to running, like what really did it for you? What was the selling point, so to speak, for you in terms of like going all in with running?
I have a big mouth. So after I ran that 5 miles, Nikki was training for a half marathon.
Okay.
And she was going to run it with her friend, and her friend backed out on her, and she was like devastated. I remember she's like, yeah, so-and-so backed out on me, and I didn't even think about it. I was like, well, I'll run it with you. And then my second thought was, what's a half marathon?
Yeah.
And I was like, and then she told me it was 13 miles. I was like, 5, 13.
Close enough,
okay,
right?
Something like that. Like, and then I was like, how long do I have? She's like, 3 months. And I'm like, okay. So that was what got me into just running a race in general. I was running for myself. And I ran. I was doing really well at it, and I was losing weight, and so I was super excited. And then I trained for that half marathon with her. Our longest training run was 8 miles. It sucked. It was awful. We almost didn't go run the race.
Mm-hmm.
And then we ended up going the next weekend and we ran the race. And at mile 8, we ended up getting separated because we were running together.
Mm-hmm.
And I ran that last 5 miles by myself. And it was fine. Like, I was out there, I was running a race. And then all of a sudden, I came around that last corner and I saw this finish line. I was like, wow, I did it. And I crossed the finish line, and I had never felt that accomplished in my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And so it took me about 24 hours. I was like, I wonder how far I can go. And so it took me a couple months to actually sign up for a marathon, but I was like, if I can do a half marathon, I can do a marathon.
Mm-hmm.
Then when I decided to run when I decided to run the marathon, somebody suggested I should start a Facebook page, and they're like, hey, you know what? Your story's really inspirational. I'm like, what do you mean it's inspirational? I'm just running, and they're like, you should totally share it. And so that was the turning point in my life. When I started training for the marathon and I started the Facebook page, because I didn't know what I was doing. I was sharing positive thoughts. I was sharing my runs. I didn't really know, but what got me was my runs got longer and longer, and the attention got stronger and stronger. And it was not real attention. It was social media attention. I was motivated by the social media attention.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the most embarrassing thing that I can actually admit to. But I ran my marathon. I ended up writing a race report. I didn't know that all I was doing was just journaling my experience, but I posted on a blog. All these people shared it, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you did this. It's so awesome." And then I was like, "Wow, I'm so cool." And I wonder what else I could do.
Yeah.
And so a month later, I went out and ran 31 miles for my 31st birthday. No race, just in the middle of the mountains.
Yeah.
And I posted it on Instagram and Facebook, and all of this attention. And I was like, oh my God, this is so awesome. And then I found a 50-mile race. And I trained, I essentially did social media all through that, and people would follow along, and they would and they would do all this stuff. And if I wasn't getting the social media attention I wanted, I would go run longer. I would try to run faster. I would try to do more. I would try to lose more weight. Then I ran 50 miles, and I had this expectation of a feeling when I crossed that finish line of the 50-mile race. And I had that feeling for about 45 seconds. And I was so excited. And then I expected a celebration. Nobody cared. I expected all this social media attention. Nobody cared. I won a coin into the Leadville 100. And that got me some attention, but it wasn't enough attention. And I fell apart. I mean, just mentally, I had this expectation that the clouds were just going to open and the sunshine was going to come out and everything was going to just be great. And then it didn't happen. And I was like, well, if 50 miles didn't do it, then 100 miles has got to do it. And that was July 2016. The attention, I wasn't getting the social media attention. But what I was getting was I was becoming a better looking guy, and I started getting attention from females that I had never had in my entire life. And that's when I got into trouble. I went from food being a coping mechanism to running being a coping mechanism to female attention being a coping mechanism to running again to drinking to running and drinking to running, drinking, and women, and nothing was fulfilling me. And I just wasn't dealing with my problems very well. So end of 2016, beginning of 2017, my life just fell apart. I ran my first 100-mile race March of 2017, which is actually 3 years to today that I finished my first 100-mile race. Again, I thought, I'm going to cross the finish line. My marriage is going to be fixed. My head is going to be fixed. I'm going to stop drinking, and I'm going to get all this attention. And then it didn't happen, and I completely fell apart. I went into this depression that I can't even explain.
Right. Yep.
Because I would look in the mirror, and I couldn't understand the face that was looking back at me. I couldn't see the guy that just accomplished 100 miles. I could see the guy that wasn't worth a shit. I could see all of the bad decisions I was making, but I couldn't see any of the good decisions I was making. I went back to Toyota because I could sell cars without really thinking about it. I was drinking. I was in the middle of an affair. I was in the middle of a divorce. I was searching for any type of attention that I could possibly get, and I wasn't getting any of it. And so finally, I started. Every day I would go home and I would be so sad and so depressed that I would just go to my fridge. I would pour a pint of Fireball, put 2 pieces of ice in there, chug it, and I knew I had 15 minutes to get into bed before I passed out. And I did that for April, May, June, July. So I did that for 4 months. And at the end of July, I woke up one morning and I just couldn't handle the pain anymore. And I decided that I wanted to crawl to the top of a mountain and jump off. And so I opened up my computer to write my final farewell. And I just started writing. And the only thing that saved my life was my journaling. Because I just started writing my process. And about an hour later, I just had this beautiful journal. And so instead of going and climbing a mountain to jump off, I went and climbed a mountain to find hope. The only thing that saved my life was journaling. Then I woke up 3 weeks later and I went and tried to run my 100-mile race. And I didn't even want to be there. I didn't care. I drank 3 bottles of Fireball during the race. And I finally dropped out at mile 69 at 1:20 in the morning. And I'll never forget, it was the middle of the night. And it was dark, and they cut off my wristband, and I just went and I just got in the car, and I just stared out the window. And I just saw, all I could see was the lights of the car and the trees just whizzing by. But I felt like I was looking at myself, looking out the window. And I just remember I couldn't feel anything. I was so spiritually lost in life. I didn't want to drink. I didn't want to eat. I couldn't cry. I couldn't laugh. I was just so numb to life. And I went back to the house and I just looked at the mirror for like an hour. And I just kept asking myself, what's going on? How did we get here? Why are we here? I just didn't understand. I was so lost. I was so confused. And the one thing that I had been working for over a year was just snatched out of my hand in just what felt like a heartbeat. And I didn't handle it well. And I jumped right back into my old behaviors because apparently I didn't learn my lesson. And so that was Saturday into Sunday. The next Friday night, I ended up going to a leadership thing all day. I ended up at the bars, and then Saturday morning, I woke up and I was in my apartment looking around like, what the heck just happened here? And I was like, I gotta go to work. I gotta find my car. I have to get my life together. This is ridiculous. And I walked out of my apartment to go find my car, and my car was up on the curb. And in that instant, I quit drinking. I got into my car, I looked at myself in the rearview mirror, and I said, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I can't do this anymore. And other than the day that I stepped on the scale of 400 pounds, that was another day that just completely shifted who I am today. I quit drinking. That second, that instant, I came up with another journaling exercise, and I took out a notepad and I just wrote anything that was on my mind, anything that was in my life, anything, and I wrote 12 legal, I had a legal pad, 12 pages of stuff was in my head, and I just went through and I just started crossing stuff out. If it didn't matter, if it was a person, if it was a thing, if it was a goal, if it didn't matter anymore, I just got rid of it. I went from 12 pages to 4, I rewrote everything, and I did it again. I just went and I just crossed out more stuff. I rewrote it, and I got down to 1 page, and I said 1 page is reasonable. And I just went through and I went through line by line, and I said, scale of 1 to 10, how important is this to me? And I line by line, I went through. If it was a 5 or a below, I crossed it out. I went through and I said, what are the 3 top priorities? I circled them. I wrote them on a new sheet of paper. I had my 3 top priorities and my 3 top goals, and I said, nothing else matters at this point. And I quit my job. I got on better terms with who's now my ex-wife. I got a new job. I ended up losing that job, and I just picked up with $47 in January of 2018, and I moved to Denver. And I said, I'm gonna completely start fresh. And I'm gonna go work on those goals. And
I want to ask, if you don't mind sharing, what were those top 3 priorities or those top 3 goals that you wrote down?
I wanted to finish Leadville. I wanted to run my own coaching business, and I wanted to clean up my life.
And then you moved out to Denver.
Yep. With
less than $50 in your pocket.
Yep.
Unpack that for us, because I'm really excited. I'm really excited, Gary, to get kind of like, where you're at today, right? And we're almost there. And your stories are full of twists and turns, but just start unpacking, kind of like starting from rock bottom when you moved out here in Denver. But you had that direction, I think, right? You had those three staples in terms of like, it's these goals, it's do or die, I'm all in with this. So let's just kind of continue if you don't mind.
Yeah. So December of 2017, I had been at this new job for 90 days, and I failed an exam, and my boss fired me, which she should have. But her departing words were, you do know that running's never going to pay your bills, right? That moment, I had my motivation.
Yeah.
And so January, I moved. I lost my apartment. I lost my job. I lost my apartment. Nikki was so gracious to let me live in her house for a couple weeks until I could get down here. And then a friend of mine opened up his home to me. I crashed in his spare bedroom for a little while. I was going to get into real estate. I hated real estate. It was awful. And I ended up that's when I went to the John Maxwell stuff. I got my coaching certificate, and I was like, you know what? If I'm going to do this, I got to do this. So I just opened it up, and I started taking clients, and I got 1 client, then I got 2 clients, and then I got 3 clients. And those 3 clients are still with me today after 2 years, over 2 years now. But I started doing that. I got into a pretty serious relationship when I got down here that will come back into play a little bit later. But I pretty much moved to Leadville for that first summer. I trained. I worked from my cell phone and my laptop. I wrote. I journaled. I just tried to discover who I was. I ended up finishing Leadville in 2018. It was like the storybook ending, except for I wasn't good enough. I finished the race, and I still didn't feel worthy of it. It wasn't a good enough finish. Nothing about it was good enough. I came back to Denver. I ended up getting a job to supplement my income at a gym. That was a disaster. My relationship became a disaster, and I got lost again. And I don't know how I keep getting lost, but I put myself into these poor situations that I know aren't good for me, but I keep doing it. There's this thing called repetition compulsion.
Of course.
And we just keep doing the same thing over and over again. And
yeah.
So I keep doing that. I ended up quitting the gym because it was not good. I tried to quit the relationship because it wasn't good. I ended up getting a job at another gym, and that's been really, really good. But in the back of my head was this nagging relationship with this female, and this nagging relationship with Leadville, because I wasn't good enough for Leadville. This relationship wasn't good enough for me, but I was like, I need this relationship. And so I've been distracted by these poor thoughts in the back of my head for so long. But I've continued coaching through this entire time. I've continued reading. I went back to Leadville last year. In 2019, I took 3.5 hours off my time, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, congrats. That's awesome.
Went from 29 hours to 25:46, but it still wasn't good enough. Like when I crossed the finish line, it wasn't good enough, and I realized that I was in an awful relationship. So I literally, no backup plan. I got out of that relationship and I moved into the back of my car for 2 months, and I just that same clear the clutter exercise that I did, I went through and I wrote down everything in my journal, crossed it all off. I came up with 3 priorities, and I said, here we go, I'm gonna figure this out. So I was on a trail run one day, and I was like, hey, I had this bright idea to get an RV, so I moved into an RV, and I moved into my office, and I've just kept moving forward, and so here I am, and finally, like I'm still coaching. I quadrupled my coaching business year over year, which is really nice. I still work at the club, and I just released 2 of my books, one of them being my journaling process, the other one being I just like to write poetry, and I finally got the courage on the inside to write some things that I had written down. And I'm going back to Leadville this year.
Right.
I've got some unfinished business, so yeah.
Now, just from your as you journal, as you just kind of like examine your own life, look at yourself, in the mirror, as you like to put it, and I love that. That's beautiful. What is your undoing? Because like as you're kind of sharing your story, I don't think I've had quite as many extremes as you, kind of like really high and then really low. But like I kind of like, because I believe reflection is very important. Like it's really important for us to look back, to look ahead, to also be in the moment. And for me, I feel like, Gary, it's like as I look at my own story, it's kind of like it's kind of the same thing over and over again. Like I'll like I was a school teacher and I had the steady income and all this, and then some way or somehow like that doesn't exist. You know what I mean? And a lot of the times it's my own. I'd say my own undoing. Like it's me. But even as I look at my own life, I'm like, I always feel like I'm not moving in the direction that I should be. You know what I mean? Like I always feel like I'm just kind of like, I don't want to say not good enough. That's not for me. But like I'm kind of always like spinning my wheels, so to speak. You know what I mean? So for you, what do you feel like as you're reflecting and journaling and just examining your own life, because you do want to be the best version of yourself, like I do? What do you feel like is always your undoing? Like what's that one thing that kind of just is that speed bump for you?
So what's interesting is, so I have this philosophy that to become somebody new, we have to unbecome who we have been. A lot of my becoming is completely brand new to me. The only people that I have to really look up to are business books, or I'm going to call them fictional people because rarely do I get to actually meet them. But they're stories, they're idols, they're authors, they're speakers, and so I'm modeling my life after them, and I don't have anybody in my life that can actually show me the way. So everything that I'm doing is trial and error. I read this, I try it, I either pass or fail. I read this, I try it, I either pass or fail. But while I'm trying to become this new person, I have to unbecome all of these other things, because that's what's holding me back. And so what ultimately happens is to unbecome who we are, to become, it's like the old fishbowl analogy. You have to jump out of one fishbowl into the other. Well, sometimes I miss the new fishbowl. But what I've learned is I'm okay with that. I mean, the very first thing that when I woke up the first morning in my car, I thought I was going to be so shameful. But I woke up and I write in my journal, and I mean, I could read it verbatim because it's sitting right there. But today is the first day of the rest of my life. Wow, I can't believe I'm actually in this position. But I don't know how I'm going to do it. We're going to figure out how to do it.
Right.
And to be able to have that sort of mindset after what most people would feel is the most devastating thing that could ever happen, I learned two important lessons. One, I had some unpacking to do with my mom and my dad. And the second thing is, so I have a fear of females because of what happened in my past, and I had a fear of poverty. I looked both of those demons right in the mouth, and I said, "Screw you! I'm gonna jump into my I'm gonna jump out of my comfort zone into my biggest unknown," and I survived. And one of the biggest things that has ever scared me is not having financial security.
Yeah.
And I did it. And I went from 6 months ago I was homeless. Today, I mean, I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
I mean, and
of course.
I'm continuing to move forward, and I'm in 1,000 times better spot. But if I wouldn't have jumped then, I would have snapped back into my past, and I know that I would have went back to that relationship because it was fulfilling something entirely unhealthy. Is the best way to put it. But by looking all this stuff in the mouth, and just facing the dark places, and actually journaling through it, actually having the conversations that I need to have, actually talking about it, being vulnerable, looking at myself and saying, you know what, I'm probably going to get my heart broken with this conversation, but being able to stand up and say, I have to have it because there's obviously something I need to unbecome through this conversation. So when I have that, I get my heart broken, but what happens is I get a better glue to kind of put it back together for the future. And that's what's made the difference between unbecoming who I was and becoming who I am today. And it's a hard process, and some days it's not pleasant, but my journaling has been probably the most influential thing because I can go back and I can reflect and I can say, okay, 3 months ago I was here, but look where I am today. And I can go back. I'm like, wow, that's growth. And so journal, if you're a client of mine, the first thing we do is we start a journal. And that's been the most important thing for people because it's too easy for us to get caught up in what we aren't doing or what we can't do yet or how far we have to go in the future. Too many times we forget where we are now and we don't look in the mirror and we don't say, where are our feet today? Because if we can really do that with a truthful set of eyes and a truthful heart, if we can really do that, the world, we can rewrite it. We can write it however we want.
What's one of the fears that you're struggling with as we sit here right now? That you have to step into, that you have to face, that you have to break through.
The fear that I am stepping into as we speak is the fear of criticism. Because to get to where I'm going or where I want to go, there's going to be a lot of criticism. I'm going to have to take some leaps. I'm going to have to take some risks. I'm going to have to put my coaching process out there, my journaling process out there. I'm going to have to stand in front of people. I'm going to have to, in my head, they're all going to laugh at me, and I got to be able to stand there with confidence and say, you know what, this is the way that I think it is, and whether you laugh at me or not, this is how it is, or this is how I believe that it is. And so publishing my books was a big thing, speaking and coaching, putting all that stuff. Essentially, I'm going to call it putting out there, but so putting it on the internet, creating videos, creating content, whether people like it or not. I need to get over that fear of criticism to actually go out and do it.
Speak on outrun your excuses. You've got the T-shirt on that says outrun your excuses. That's kind of like something I found on your social media and your website. What is that phrase? What does that wording mean to you, and how do you kind of express that just in your day-to-day life?
Yeah, so Run Epic, Outrun Your Excuses, it all kind of just happened in my journal one day, and so I created it. But to run means to move faster than a walk. To do something epic means to do something great or extraordinary. And Outrun Your Excuses has kind of come from my very first run. Like, literally, I had all of the excuses on why I couldn't do it, why I shouldn't do it, why I was going to get laughed at. And I went out and I did it again. And every single time I've came up on some sort of setback or adversity, you have the option to quit or you have the option to keep going. We have all these excuses of all the reasons that it can't work, but we only need one reason why it can. And if we can focus on that one reason, this actually has nothing to do with running. It has everything to do with life. And if we just get over our excuses and take that step towards, you know what, this is the one reason, this is the possibility that it could work versus here's all the reasons that it might not work, that's the fear that we have to get over. So just get over your excuses and really, I mean, failure is going to happen, but failure is not final.
Amen.
Keep going.
What's your goal for kind of like your race season this year for Leadville? What's your ultimate goal in terms of just being a running athlete?
So this year I'm going to do what's called Leadman. So it's also in Leadville, but it's the marathon in June. I'm going to do the 50-mile run in July, which is part of the series, and then there's a 100-mile bike in the middle of August. Then you wake up the next day and run a 10K, and then the next weekend is the 100-mile run. So I'm teaching myself to ride a bike as we speak.
Okay, cool.
So
cool. Yeah,
kind of like running. I'm just starting super small, and I'm just learning. I mean, kind of like I have training wheels on, and then I'm gonna teach myself how to ride 100 miles on a bike. So it's 282 miles, and I'm gonna throw in another 100-mile bike race, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Now, Ultra. You're tied in with them, right? Are you a sponsored athlete with them? I saw something on your social media about that.
Yeah. So I can't remember the exact word I need to use, but I think it's sponsored Ultra Red Team athlete.
Okay.
But,
Okay.
yeah. So they have supported me. I've worn their shoes for 5, almost 6 years now, and I love them. They're a wonderful company. They're a wonderful shoe. This is my 4th or 5th year on the Red Team.
Cool.
And they've just, oh my gosh, they've been so supportive. I've met so many athletes within, and I run injury free. Like the zero drop, the foot shaped toe box, all of them just keeps me running strong. And I wear a size 15.
Oh wow, dang dude.
So
I wear like 12, 13, and I thought that was pretty big, but yeah.
So
wow.
shoes are super important to me. And,
of course.
You know, I spend 2,000 miles running a year, and so you know I need to keep my feet healthy and the rest of my body healthy. So yeah. They've been a great company to work with, and I'm so grateful for them every single day when I put my shoes on.
Cool. Now, quickly, we're gonna start wrapping things up here, Gary. But in terms of just, I do, because you are a trainer and obviously you do a lot of running and stuff. You know, just the importance of, because this is something when I'm, you know, some of my personal training clients, actually they're usually females, but they come in and they're like, you know, type A, and they're just like go and like doing all this HIIT stuff, and I'm like, whoa, time out. like you need to chill out a little bit. You need to pull back on some things here. But, you know, I really try to emphasize with endurance athletes, especially because I feel like it's sometimes neglected within the endurance community, is resistance training, you know, and strength training, right?
Yep.
So, you know, I've had some, again, I've had some professional ultra runners on here, and, you know, we sometimes touch on the training, sometimes we don't, but I just feel like, you know, that's something that is always brought up in terms of endurance athletes, whether it's running, biking, swimming, is, you know, we have these, you know, the injuries over because of the mileage they're putting on. It's kind of like the repetition if there's some bad mechanics, but just, I want to just focus quickly on one aspect of the training because I feel like it's very vital, it's very important, and I feel like it's neglected a lot with endurance athletes, is, again, that strength training. How important is it to, you know, have some sort of strength training regimen within your overall training regimen as an endurance athlete?
So, if you haven't figured it out, I do small things that add up to humongous things. So I do strength training, band work, TRX 7 days a week. So you saw my TRX right behind me, 20 minutes a day.
Okay, wow,
It's
cool.
not you need to do this for 14 hours,
Right,
three
right.
times a week. It's 20 minutes a day. So I do TRX, I do band work, and I do some simple yoga stretches. And
Cool.
so 20 minutes a day, no matter what. It's just like I walk or I move for 20 minutes a day. I read for 20 minutes a day. I journal for 20 minutes a day. I do strength training and band work for 20 minutes a day. Now, I do tons of yoga because I have friends that are yoga instructors, and I love doing yoga, and I love the meditation yoga.
Absolutely.
But 20 minutes every single day, and I can't stress that enough. It adds up to 5 days a year of strength training.
Right.
It's so huge, but it takes 20 minutes. Literally, I can be on a phone call with a client, and I can do my band work and my TRX. It takes no effort whatsoever. And I can do it anywhere. Like, it's not, I don't have to go to the gym. I don't have to have all this special equipment. I literally have some TRX bands, and I've got, a couple, like some hip bands, and it's 20 minutes. It's so simple. But if it's simple to do, it's also simple not to do.
Of course.
So most people just kind of pass on it. But the way I use an analogy to hammer home this point is we write left to right. Okay, so if we wrote on the same line every single time, every single time, so we just rewrite over and over and over again. That's running and biking. So if we stay on one line, our muscles are doing the same thing all the time. Our muscles need to go up and down. In order for us to read the English language, we have to move from the top line to the next line to the next line so that we can change the way that our muscles are moving. And if we do that, we stay a lot more healthy. Injuries tend to be a lot less. If we're rolling, we're using tennis balls, stuff like that. You don't need all this expensive equipment. It's simple.
Right.
It's bands, it's tennis balls, and it's just putting in the effort every single day. But most people wait until it's a problem, and once it becomes an urgency or an emergency, then you have to go and spend all this money. But if you just make it a daily priority, you're so far ahead of the game, and an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Some guy named Benjamin Franklin said that a really long time ago. But it's set in with me, and it's made a big positive impact in my running and athletic career.
Awesome. Okay. I just kind of want to give you the opportunity, Gary. We've had we're going on 2-hour conversation here, so it's been very thorough, right? We've really dug into your story, and I just really appreciate the authenticity. I just kind of want to before I ask you the last question, I want to kind of give you the opportunity to just share anything that you want to share with the listeners. Is there maybe that one thing that's just been lately just burning in your heart, burning in your soul that you kind of want to put out there? Maybe you just kind of want to just wrap up the conversation, put a bow on it. However you want to do that, however you want to kind of take that. If you just have some maybe last words for myself and listeners, that would be cool.
Absolutely. So you'd asked me at the beginning for my motto or my mantra, and it's my victory isn't crossing the finish line. My victory is taking the next step after I want to quit. That is the only thing that has kept me moving forward. I've run into a lot of stuff. I mean, a lot of the stuff I've put myself into, but a lot of adversity, a lot of pain, a lot of shame I've dealt with a lot mentally, physically, spiritually. I've been rock bottom several times. I've been drinking every day. And for some reason, this one motto has kept me going. No matter how bad things are, no matter how bad things get, just keep moving forward. Like if you can move forward and you can find some sort of benefit from the adversity, some sort of benefit from the setback, and if you just look at it as, what can I learn from this situation? How can I grow into a better person from this situation? Then it doesn't matter what goes wrong. If you always look at it as, hey, this situation's giving me an opportunity to grow. What's the universe trying to teach me? How can I benefit from it? And then once you answer that question, you learn your lesson and you move forward. And the self-abuse that I used to put on myself because I would run into a stumbling block and be like, oh, well, it means that I suck. No, it doesn't mean that I suck. It means that, something's there and I need to learn a lesson from it so I can grow. And taking that entirely different mindset into it is, how can I benefit from this adversity? that is the number one question I ask myself when I run into a problem. And if you can ask yourself that question and answer it, then you'll learn to just keep moving forward. And it's that next step after that adversity that takes you into the new realm of the rest of your life. And, you know, just take that next step. I've almost quit a couple times. And if I would have quit, I'd be dead. And so I'm so thankful that I learned this lesson a long time ago to just keep moving forward. And if there's only one thing that I've really been able to give to my kids, and it's just keep moving forward. And they still write it on little notes for me. Dad, I know things are hard, but you know what? Just keep moving forward. It doesn't last forever. And so it's worked for me. And I just, you know, I know there's people out there going through tough times, and just keep moving forward. Yeah.
So I'm going to change the I told you what the last question is going to be, but I changed it just because of our conversation. So the last question I'm going to ask you is, who are you, Gary, today?
I'm a badass motherfucker who doesn't take any shit from anybody. And I stole that from Cool Runnings. But you can look up on my mirror, BAMF. There's nothing that can break me from here on forward. And I've seen the highest of highs, I've seen the lowest of lows. I've seen the darkest places of my mind, and I somehow am able to go in there and shine a light on it. And I stopped grinding a long time ago, and I found this thing called softening your heart. And I really feel like I've found a heart of gold through a lead man mindset, where you just go into the darkness and you keep uncovering and you keep moving things around and you keep shining a light, and every once in a while you'll go in and you'll just find a piece of gold. And you take that piece of gold and you're like, okay, like just keep going and just keep going. And every time I find a nugget of gold in my mind and I put it in my heart and I soften it and I find a little bit more vulnerability, and I find a little bit more caring, I find a little bit more compassion. Every time I do that, it helps me open up a conversation with someone new. It helps me help someone else, because I can look at them without judgment. I can talk to them, I can listen to them without judgment. And if there's one thing I wish I could go back and do, is I could find somebody in 2017 that I could have opened my heart to, and they wouldn't have judged me. But every single person that I talked to judged me. And I don't think anybody should ever have to deal with their demons and be judged for them, because ultimately I was doing things, they were my fault, but the reasons that I was doing them, what I was hoping to gain from those situations, was nothing but a little boy on the inside just screaming for attention. And so, you know, every time I can soften myself up and I can give somebody my vulnerability, share my story, and listen to them with passion and compassion, and just find out why they're going through the hard times, that softening of my own heart has helped me help other people more than anything else that I've ever done.
Awesome, man. So obviously there's going to be people that are going to listen to this, and all of your story, a part of your story, one of your quotes, something that you've shared is going to, you know, powerfully and positively impact them. So where can people find out more about you? Where can people find your books? Where can people follow along your journey? You know, website, social media, all the things. Where can people reach out?
So you can always hit me up at outrunyourexcuses.com. There's 150 blogs. I've actually published a lot of my private journals from the past 4 or 5 years. So there's some pretty deep stuff in there. There's links to my books, but you can find my books on Amazon. Corner of Sunshine and Hope is my behavioral therapy book, but it has my journaling process in there and how to start journaling. And then I wrote a poetry book just because I had some stuff on my mind, but that's called Songs of a Mountain Man, again on Amazon as well. Instagram is my favorite, Outrun Your Excuses. You can also find me on Facebook at Coach Gary Stotler, facebook.com/Coach Gary Stotler. And other than that, just GaryStotler.com. You can find me pretty much anywhere.
Cool. So, Gary, I want to thank you for your time, and I want to thank you for the vulnerability, the authenticity. Thank you for just digging in with me in terms of conversation and your story. You know, this is just like everything. My life's been up and down and all around and wild and crazy, but like and there's a lot of times where I want to reschedule a podcast conversation. I don't really want to do it, but literally every time I have these conversations, like I leave filled up, you know. So I just want to thank you again for sharing your story, for continuing to put your story out there through your writings, through podcasts, through public speaking, and all the things that you've got going on. It's greatly appreciated, and I just thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been wonderful.
For sure.
We should definitely do it again.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely, dude. And thank you to Michelle for introducing
Yes.
Gary and myself, and I know you were a part of the first podcast meetup here. I don't know, it was probably like 2, 3, 4 weeks ago now, but thank you so much, Michelle. I'm sure you're going to be listening to this, and if you made it this far to the end, we appreciate you for introducing us. 127 Fit podcast listeners, once again, I just want to thank you so very much for your listening ears. They're always greatly appreciated. If you would like to find out more about the guests that I'm bringing onto the podcast, or if you'd like to find out more about myself personally, you can find all of that information on Instagram at 127fit. Facebook is at Quentin Vars. LinkedIn is at Quentin Vars. If you guys would do me a huge favor and please leave a 5-star rating and review, and also subscribe to the podcast, that would be greatly appreciated, especially within the iTunes Apple Podcast app. As you do that, you subscribe, you leave the rating and the review, more people are able to find the podcast, more people are able to listen, and we know that the name of the game is more people are able to be positively impacted. If you think you would be a great guest, or if you have a friend or an acquaintance you think would be a great guest or guest for the 127 Fit podcast, you can send me an email or give this email out. The email is 127fit@gmail.com. And as you guys are finding great value in a specific episode or episodes of the 127 Fit podcast, and in which I know you are, I would just ask that you would take that specific episode and episodes that you're finding that value in and share it on your Facebook and Instagram stories using the hashtag #BeSomeoneToFollow. And per the usual, I will leave you with Proverbs 24:10, which states, "If you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small." This time, until next time, I will catch you guys later.